Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something pretty exciting, the potential to predict serious liver disease years before you'd ever know you had it.
Exactly. We're talking about MASLD, metabolic dysfunction-associated steatotic liver disease. It's, well, increasingly common, and frankly, it can be quite serious, even fatal.
And a big problem is catching it early, right? It often flies under the radar.
It really does, until symptoms are quite advanced, often. But that's where this new research comes in, presented at Digestive Disease Week 2025.
Okay, so this research suggests we might get a very early warning.
Potentially, yes, years in advance. The idea is to understand these findings and what they could mean for, catching things much earlier.
And it all centers around specific proteins in the blood.
That's the core finding. 5 specific blood proteins seem to be linked to a higher risk of developing severe MASLD later on.
5 proteins. Okay, let's name them. CDHR2, FUOM, KRT18.
ACY1 and GG21. Yep, those are the 5.
So how did the researchers land on these 5? Must have been a big study.
Oh, it was huge. They analyzed blood samples from the UK Biobank. That's over 50,000 people.
Wow.
And they followed their health records for, get this, more than 16 years.
16 years. That's incredible foresight.
It is. They screened, I think, over 2,700 different proteins in those samples to see which ones correlated with people who eventually developed severe liver disease.
And these 5 stood out.
These 5 shared consistent links.
So the big question, how accurate is this prediction? If someone has certain levels of these proteins, how likely are they to get sick?
Well, the numbers are pretty striking. Using just those 5 proteins, they achieved about 83.8% accuracy in predicting the disease 5 years before diagnosis.
84%, 5 years out. That's impressive. What about further back, like the full 16 years?
Even 16 years before diagnosis, the accuracy was still pretty good, around 75.6%. That's quite a signal that far in advance.
That really is significant. And I heard that adding other known risk factors boosted the accuracy even more.
Yes, that's right. When they combine the protein data with standard clinical biomarkers, things like your BMI, daily exercise levels, factors we already know affect liver health.
Things you might discuss with your doctor anyway.
Exactly. When they added those in, the accuracy jumped to over 90% at the 5-year mark.
90%.
And still over 82% predicting 16 years out. So it suggests kind of multifaceted approach might be really powerful.
Okay, this is really promising. But was this just seen in the UK population? Or did they check elsewhere?
That's a crucial point. They tested their model in a completely separate cohort in China. They found similar results. That consistency across different populations really strengthens the case that these proteins might be reliable markers.
It makes it feel much more robust, definitely. But we should add a note of caution, maybe. What kind of study was this?
A very important point. This is an observational study. It shows a strong association, a link, between these protein levels and getting liver disease later.
But association isn't causation.
Precisely. It doesn't prove these proteins cause the disease directly. There could be complex biological reasons behind the link that, still need more investigation. We need more research to understand the why.
Got it. So it's about identifying risk, the signal, not necessarily the direct trigger yet. One of the researchers, Dr. Shi Yu, commented on this potential, right?
Yes, Dr. Yu really emphasized the potential impact, pointing out that predicting risk years ahead could be, transformative.
Because right now people often don't know they're at risk.
Exactly. They might be unaware until symptoms appear. So Dr. Yu stressed the urgent need for good biomarkers and suggested these proteins offer a really promising new avenue for that early prediction and maybe even intervention down the line.
Okay, so let's boil this down. What's the main takeaway for you listening?
I think the key thing is this discovery opens a new door. The possibility of predicting severe liver disease, MASLD, potentially a decade or more before it becomes clinically apparent.
Using these 5 plasma proteins as signals.
Right. It could help identify people who need closer monitoring or lifestyle changes much, much earlier.
And that earlier warning could make a massive difference, allowing for interventions when they're likely most effective, perhaps preventing the worst outcomes of what's become a really common and serious condition.
Absolutely. It shifts the paradigm towards proactive management, which leads to maybe a final thought for you to ponder.
Go on.
If we can get this good at predicting something like liver disease so far in advance, What other chronic diseases, ones that develop silently for years, could we potentially forecast?
Like Alzheimer's, some cancers, maybe heart disease.
Perhaps. What would it mean for your health, for healthcare, if we could see these things coming years, even decades earlier? What possibilities would that open up?